This video is a 1-hour compilation of the youngest serial killers to ever exist. So let's go in raw. Jasmine Richardson. This first child killer was a 12-year-old girl who slaughtered her entire family so she could run away with her 23-year-old werewolf boyfriend. Yeah, I'm not even kidding about this. It's April 2006 and 12-year-old Jasmine is going through her little emo rebel phase that apparently every teenager went through back then, spending way too much time on the early internet. But outside of her internet emo persona, she lived a seemingly normal, happy life with a great family. They all lived in Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada. No, I'm not even kidding. This place is really called Medicine Hat. Mark and Deborah Richardson were the parents of Jasmine, as well as her 8-year-old little brother Tyler. Those who knew the Richardsons described them as an average, peaceful family, including Jasmine, who, well, we'll get into why we already know that's not true. Like I said earlier, Jasmine was spending a little bit too much time on the internet, especially for a 12-year-old girl. She signed up for profiles on typical websites of the time like MySpace, but also on more unknown sites like VampireFreaks.com. VampireFreaks.com, people. Yeah, pretty weird, but like she was literally 12 years old. I probably would have just watched box set videos when I was 12, but hey, to each their own, I guess. Subscribe. On these sites, Jasmine was posting images of herself wearing goth clothing, heavy eye makeup, and she would even pose with fake guns. It was clear that she had quite an interest in the punk lifestyle, which unfortunately leads us to the first steps of the brutal murders of her parents and her little brother. But why? How does being goth lead to her entire family being goddamn murdered? Well, you little boxhead, let me tell you about a rather interesting emo guy that Jasmine was about to meet. With a few of her friends, Jasmine would regularly attend rock concerts. And at one of these shows, she meets a 23-year-old man. His name was Jeremy Steinke. Jeremy was a high school dropout who lived in a trailer park with his mother, was a very avid weed smoker, and was also abused as a child. Yeah, all of this sounds like a recipe for goddamn disaster, people. But hold on, get this. He genuinely described himself as a 300-year-old werewolf. Yup. And he was dead goddamn serious too. No, I mean seriously, this guy even wore a vial of blood around his neck at all times, telling people that he enjoyed the taste of it. Damn, and I thought I was freaky. Anyways, Jasmine introduces herself to Jeremy as a 15-year-old, rather than her true age, 12 years old. Not like that's any better, especially to a 23-year-old goddamn man. But as we know, the werewolf dude over here didn't really care, and seemed to like the fact that Jasmine was kind of young. Bro, this guy would have been a great goddamn Minecraft YouTuber. Nope. Hey, don't attack me. You know them Minecraft YouTubers be getting... They be crossing some lines. After the two meet in person, they begin chatting online nearly every day. They grew super close and even became involved romantically. As an older guy, Jeremy found it easy to pursue someone of Jasmine's young age. You goddamn creep. On the other hand, Jasmine just wanted to feel a connection and was desperate to have her first love. I mean, come on, all of us were like that when we were young. I'm still waiting. Jeremy, being the old and wise goth that he was, heavily influenced and even pressured Jasmine into keeping up with her dark, gothy punk aesthetic. And of course, Jasmine complies. She begins to double down on her emo-ness, becoming even more involved in creepy sites online. And she even started wearing more revealing punk clothing in her real life. As a result, her family and the people around her start to notice this sudden shift in Jasmine's personality. Mark and Deborah Richardson, Jasmine's parents, became suspicious with their daughter's behavior and decided to do some snooping, as any parent would. And in the weeks leading up to their murder in April 2006, they discovered that a 23-year-old man had been in contact with their young little daughter. Obviously, they would freak the hell out. I mean, who the hell wouldn't? They just found out that a weird, creepy-looking older werewolf guy was not just talking with, but very inappropriately involved with their little girl. So Jasmine's parents immediately banned her from contacting Jeremy ever again. No calling, no texting, no rock shows, absolutely goddamn nothing. And Jasmine, being the typical teenager that she was, saw this as her parents separating her from her love life. I hate you, Mom, you're ruining my life. Don't worry, honey, it's just a phase. She'll grow out of it. They were goddamn wrong. Knowing how this story ends, it's pretty obvious that Jasmine and Jeremy's relationship didn't end there. Remember that little site vampirefreaks.com? Well, the two forbidden lovers actually found a way to communicate through it. Using fake-ass usernames, they carefully continued to chat through the website, leaving Jasmine's parents completely unaware. Not only could Jasmine have been killed by the 23-year-old werewolf boyfriend her damn self, but she didn't even think about if she was chatting with a real person on vampirefreaks.com or not. Honestly, I would prefer chatting with someone a little bit more, digital. And that's where today's sponsor comes in. I want to introduce you to Poly AI, an app that will blow your mind and unleash your inner chatterbox. Think outside of the box and have that fictional character you've always been thinking about in your mind to come to life. Have them joke around or even go on a epic little adventure with you. Now, please do not take it to the level Jasmine took it to. Anyways, Poly AI lets you unleash your creativity and build your own AI chatbot, complete with a unique personality and voice. It can be anyone you can imagine. So let's create some corny guy named Boxhead, and let's ask him what he'll do to me if I do not subscribe to the channel.
You don't wanna know.
Man, what the? I don't want to know what that means. Literally, what are you waiting for? Download the app from the link in the description, search my code BOXHEAD in Poly AI search bar to get Poly Premium features. With over 10 million downloads worldwide, it's a must-have app for you to unleash your creativity. Think outside of the box, people. Join today and start the conversation. Thanks to Poly AI for sponsoring today's video, and let's get on with the show. But Jasmine wasn't off the hook just yet. Her parents were keeping a very close eye on her outside life, always knowing where she was or who she was with. They even drove her to and from school, all with one goal in mind: no meeting Jeremy. The fact that the two wouldn't be able to see each other without her parents knowing infuriated the both of them. And this, ladies and boxheads, is when the planning of the Richardson family murders began. Through their little freaky vampire website, Jasmine messages her boyfriend saying, "So, I have this plan. It starts with killing them and ends with me living with you." Jeremy, who was probably delighted to hear this, accepted her crazy plan. Together, they conspired through online messages to murder the Richardson family in their own goddamn home. April 22nd, 2006. A heavily intoxicated and drugged up Jeremy makes his way to the Richardson family home in Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada. He's dressed in all black and a ski mask so no one sees him. I wonder what TV show he got that from. Our original buddy. Jasmine secretly lets Jeremy inside the house and then retreats back upstairs to her bedroom. I guess she didn't want to see the murder of her family that she literally planned out. All alone now, Jeremy makes his way into the basement of the house. Not very quietly though, because he is super drunk. Alright, fine, boxheads, I'll give it to him here. This guy was definitely more of a werewolf than a goddamn ninja. Anyways, Jasmine's mother, 48-year-old Deborah Richardson, was in this basement, doing a load of laundry like it was any, typical kind of day. Jeremy sees her and remembers the plan that he and his girlfriend constructed. Every Richardson must die tonight. Suddenly, Jeremy emerges from the shadows of the dark basement holding a 6-inch folding knife. Deborah screams at the top of her lungs as this masked man lunges at her and attacks her. Unfortunately, she would succumb to her wounds after being stabbed 12 times in the chest by Jeremy. You heard me right, people, 12 goddamn times! Because of Jeremy's loud attack and Deborah's piercing screams, the rest of the family had been woken up. Jasmine's father, 42-year-old Mark Richardson, immediately grabs a screwdriver and makes his way down to the basement in a hurry, worried that his wife might be in trouble. Little did he know what was coming. Mark rushes down to the basement and finds blood everywhere. on the walls, on the floor, and as soon as he looked over, there he saw a random man in a ski mask standing over his dead wife with a bloody knife in his hands. Scared, Mark turns around and starts sprinting up the stairs. But he wasn't fast enough. He feels the hands of Jeremy grabbing him back down, followed by the pain of a knife plunging into his back. Jeremy stabs Mark 9 times in the back. But Mark doesn't let up easily. He fights to save not only his life, but the lives of his children as well. With all of the remaining strength that he had, an adrenaline-fueled, terrified Mark tries his hardest to injure his attacker in any way possible. He desperately hits Jeremy and even tries to gouge his eyes out, but none of it works. This intoxicated, drugged-up werewolf man doesn't seem to feel any pain. Eventually, Jeremy grabs his knife and stabs Mark again, this time in his chest and abdomen area. Before Mark takes his last breath, he is able to weakly mutter one word to Jeremy. Why? Not even knowing that this masked killer was his daughter's secret boyfriend. Jeremy then replied, "Because your daughter wanted it this way." Mark's eyes then shut forever, dying in the pool of his own blood. Jasmine's father suffered 13 stab wounds to the front of his body and 9 wounds to his back at the hands of Jeremy. So now we got 2 dead Richardsons in the basement. But as we know, the Richardsons were a family of 4, and if Jasmine planned it, then that leaves 1 Richardson left, 8-year-old Tyler. While Jeremy was in the basement dealing with Jasmine's parents, part of their twisted plan was for Jasmine to distract her little brother. In Tyler's upstairs bedroom, the siblings are waiting for Jeremy to handle his business in the basement. But of course, little Tyler did not know what was going on. While carrying the dripping, bloody knife used to kill Mark and Deborah, Jeremy made his way up the stairs to meet his 12-year-old girlfriend and eliminate their last target. When Jeremy enters the bedroom, he hands Jasmine the same knife that he used to murder her parents. He then forcefully grabs and pins down the 8-year-old. While he's held down on this bed by this grown man, Tyler cries and pleads for his life to his sister. I mean, seriously, what kind of person could listen to the cries of an innocent child, much less their own brother, and still want to murder them? Gosh. Tyler can't move, his whole body is restrained, and he is terrified. Imagine a grown, masked man holding you down while your own big sister does nothing to protect you. This poor little kid probably had no idea that his sister was behind all of this. Well, until she held the knife over him. Yeah, this girl is absolutely disgusting. So with zero care for Tyler's pleading, Jasmine then drives the 6-inch knife into little Tyler's chest. But he actually survives this blow to the chest. The boy was making gargling sounds and was still able to move around. If Jasmine had any remorse in her heart, she could have changed her mind right there and then. She could have called it all off and saved her little brother's life. But no, this evil little girl had her mind made up. Her whole family had to die that night. Jasmine then hands the knife back to her boyfriend. Jeremy takes the blade and slashes the little boy's throat wide open, killing him instantly. The blood from the slash sprayed all over the kid's toys in his room. Talk about goddamn disgusting. Some reports even say that in an attempt to defend himself from his sister and her boyfriend, the 8-year-old actually grabbed a toy lightsaber. How could someone even do this? The kid tried to defend himself with a lightsaber. Like, this is just a terrible story. In the end, Tyler Jacob Richardson was stabbed 5 times, with a severe laceration to his throat. With this death, that left the entire Richardson family members dead, besides one, of course. I mean, it was exactly what Jeremy and Jasmine wanted. A life free of annoying parents who in reality just wanted to protect their daughter and make sure she was safe. After the murders were finished, the 2 lovers fled the area without any remorse, leaving a house full of dead bodies behind. They hitched a ride from a friend and just tried to get as far away from the house as possible. It wasn't until the next day when the 8-year-old child of a neighbor saw Deborah's dead body through a window. That's when the police were called. The police initially suspected a home invasion and the entire family had been killed on the night of April 22nd. But as the cops walked around the house, they came across family photos and started noticing a face in the photos who, well, wasn't dead in the house. The police quickly realized that there was a 4th missing member of the Richardson family. An Amber Alert was sent out for Jasmine Richardson and her name was everywhere. on the news of course. People were actually concerned for her safety, thinking that she might have been abducted by home invaders. No one would have imagined the real goddamn story. Once the police had found Jasmine's computer, they were able to read through her messages and found a graphic drawing of her family dying. And ladies and box heads, that's when they began to put together the real story. As the police read further and further into the messages, they discovered that Jasmine was actually the mastermind behind these awful, disgusting, brutal murders. They found where she first brought up the idea to her boyfriend and how he so eagerly complied. They now knew that she wasn't a victim. So, the police set out to find and arrest the two lovers. And because of the Amber Alert, Jasmine and Jeremy were spotted about 80 miles away, in Leader, Saskatchewan, Canada. They were seen casually hanging out with friends, cuddling, kissing, bragging, and acting like nothing bad had happened while eating in a restaurant. So, the police were called and the two were arrested. In court, Jasmine Richardson was convicted of 3 counts of murder. However, because she was only 12 years old at the time of the crime, the maximum punishment she could have served in prison was only 10 years. So, boxheads, she was actually released in 2016 and she has been a free woman ever since. And fun fact, but not really fun, Jasmine Richardson is the youngest person to ever be convicted of a triple murder in Canada. As for Jeremy Steinke, well, they didn't go as easy on a grown-ass man. Excuse me, werewolf. He was found guilty for 3 counts of murder and sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences in prison. I guess you can say Jeremy would never see a full moon again, huh? Bad joke. Erin Caffey. This next child killer orchestrated the vicious murder of her whole family using guns and samurai swords. Yeah. March 1st, 2008. 4 members of the Caffey family are sound asleep in their beds when 2 men break into their home. These men would then carry out brutal attacks on the family, resulting in the murders of the mother and her 2 young sons. A gruesome murder plan that was later discovered to be ordered by the Caffey family's own 16-year-old daughter, Erin. But before we get into more graphic detail, let me give you some background information, as we typically do. It's the fall of 2007 in the small town of Alba, Texas. Not to be cliche, but it's one of those quiet towns where everyone knows each other and nothing crazy ever really happens. Alba was full of tradition, God-fearing religious families who never missed church on a Sunday, including the Caffeys, a typical southern family of 5. 41-year-old Terry Caffey and 38-year-old Penny Caffey were the parents of 3 children. 13-year-old Matthew, 8-year-old Tyler, and their eldest child, 16-year-old Erin Caffey. Erin was a great student, regularly went to church, and had the voice of an angel, they say, as she would usually sing in the church choir. She seems to be a good kid on a path to success. So now you're probably wondering, if everything was all sunshine and rainbows for Erin Caffey, what exactly went wrong in her life and gave her these murderous thoughts? How in goddamn hell did she end up killing her goddamn family? Well, it all starts out when Erin meets her soon-to-be murder accomplice, Charlie Wilkinson. Just about 5 months before the murders, Erin meets 18-year-old Charlie while she's working a shift at her part-time fast food job. He was a couple years older than her and apparently Erin's type. So the two developed a romantic relationship that moved pretty goddamn quickly. Erin and Charlie spent all of their time together, becoming basically inseparable. And only after a couple of months of dating, Charlie actually proposed to Erin with a promise ring. Thankfully, they didn't actually get married, but it goes to show how head over heels they were for each other. Meaning they would do anything. And I mean seriously anything for one another. Now, this is where things start to take a dark turn. Erin's parents were not very fond of their daughter's boyfriend. He was antisocial, rude, and was the cause of Erin's rebellious phase over the past few months. Their once sweet and ambitious daughter had become closed off to them, and even began slipping up in school. Erin's parents decided that school was far more important to Erin's life than her boyfriend. Reasonably so. So, they demanded that Charlie and Erin break up. But oh boy, they did not realize just how in love this couple really was. Charlie was infuriated with the idea of having to break up with his girlfriend and suggested that Erin actually run away with him. However, Erin had a much more sinister idea in her mind. Erin wholeheartedly believed that the only way for her and Charlie to stay together was if they somehow murdered the entire Caffey family. That's right, the entire family, including her innocent younger brothers. So, Erin tries convincing Charlie of what they have to do in order to be together, and well, it actually works because Charlie agrees to help kill the whole family. But they knew they wouldn't be able to get the job done by themselves. I mean, there were 4 members of the family to kill, and Erin didn't want to do any of the killing by herself, which would leave Charlie to kill 4 people on his own. So Erin and Charlie did what any normal psychopathic teenagers would do and convinced even more people to help them with their plan of killing the entire family. They recruited one of Charlie's friends, 20-year-old Charles Wade, to help them with the actual killing part of the plan. Then they had Charles's girlfriend, 18-year-old Bobby Johnson, act as the getaway driver. Yeah, let's just fast forward to March 1st, 2008, at around 3 a.m. Erin's parents, Terry and Penny, were sound asleep in their bed. That is until their bedroom door slams open, disrupting them from their sleep. Before Erin's parents even knew what was going on or who'd even opened the door, 2 men forcefully rushed into the room. Confused and terrified, the Caffey parents screamed in fear for their lives, unaware of the horrors that were about to unfold. Without any hesitations, the intruders started firing .22 caliber rifle bullets at the defenseless Caffey parents. 1 second, the parents were peacefully sleeping, and the next, they were in a pool of their own blood, fighting for their lives. Terry, Erin's father, is shot multiple times in the chest as he throws his body over his wife to try and protect her. The attackers then shoot Terry in the face, causing him to fall off the bed and onto the floor. Unfortunately, Terry wouldn't be able to protect his wife as he lays in the pool of his own blood on the floor. He tries mustering all the strength in his body to get up, to speak, to do anything, but he can't. Terry had been shot a total of 11 times and was severely injured. Meanwhile, his wife Penny just laid on the blood-soaked bed as the killers continued to load her body up with bullets. But as scared as she was, she didn't give up easily either. In fact, the attackers got super frustrated when Penny just wouldn't die from the bullets. And remember when I mentioned a goddamn samurai sword at the beginning of this section? Well, this is when that sword is used. One of the attackers takes the sword and aligns it with the middle of poor Penny's throat. Already covered in gunshot wounds, Penny has no strength left to defend herself. Knowing what he must do next, the man slowly lowers the sharp blade closer and closer to his victim. He then plunges the blade right into her neck and slashes it out of the side. Blood sprays everywhere. This brutal action nearly decapitates the poor woman. Unfortunately, Penny Caffey had no chance of survival from this brutal attack. She died right there in that bloody bed at the hands of Charlie and Charles. But Erin Caffey, her own daughter, was really the one with blood on her hands. Despite being shot 11 times, the father, Terry Caffey, was actually still alive on the floor and heard the whole thing. I mean, can you even imagine having to witness the truly evil murder of your wife and hardly clinging on to the life of yourself? And to make things worse, the attackers were now headed upstairs toward the Caffey children's bedrooms, ready to do the same thing to Terry's children. While falling in and out of consciousness, Terry could hear the loud footsteps of the 2 men going up the stairs. He desperately wanted to save his kids' lives, but he was way too injured to move fast enough and was slipping in his own blood. Upstairs, the men quickly burst into 13-year-old Matthew Caffey's bedroom. Immediately, Matthew recognizes one of the assailants as Charlie, his older sister's boyfriend. And after hearing the traumatic screams of his mother and father just a few moments before, Matthew knew exactly what was coming. Completely terrified, Matthew begged and pleaded with Charlie to spare his life. He cried as he begged him, "No, Charlie, please don't do this," and asked him, "Why are you doing this?" The men, unfazed by the child's begging, shot him right in the face and his neck. Silence. After killing Matthew, they rushed over to the next room to kill the youngest kid in the family, 8-year-old Tyler Caffey. God, these people are just disgusting. Tyler had been hiding in the closet of his older sister's room. This poor innocent kid had heard all of the attacks that came before him, so he hid, praying that he wouldn't be found. Tyler sat in that dark closet alone, terrified, knowing that no one in his family would be there to protect him. Could you just imagine the fear that this kid probably felt? Sadly, Charlie and Charles eventually found Tyler in that closet. They grabbed the boy out of the closet, pushed him onto the ground, and oh god, this is hard to say. They took turns stabbing their samurai swords into the 8-year-old's body. Satisfied with their sick killings, Charlie and Charles then went around the house collecting any valuables or cash they could find. Aaron and Charlie actually planned to pay their accomplice Charles with the $2,000 that was stashed somewhere in the cafe home. Once the job was done, of course. Then the killers doused the home with lighter fluid and set the whole damn place on fire. Yeah, surely that wouldn't draw any attention to the horrific crimes that they just committed there. Anyways, remember how I told you that Terry Caffey, Aaron's father, had actually survived? Yeah, well, he wasn't free to go just yet. This poor guy had to fight his way out of a burning building after being shot 11 times, right after his youngest son Tyler was just killed. Terry realized that his whole family was probably dead. He even assumed that his daughter Erin had been killed too. We'll get into that in a second. But Terry couldn't just handle this idea of his family being gone. He stops fighting and just, well, gives up. He collapses into his own pool of blood on the bedroom floor and falls unconscious. However, thanks to that fire Charlie and Charles had set in the house, Terry wakes up. His body feels hot and he's no longer just choking on blood, but on smoke too. He realizes that the house is on fire and if he doesn't get out now, he will die this time. With all of the strength he could possibly muster, Terry drags his body through the bedroom and pulls himself out of a window. Thankfully, Terry and Penny's bedroom was only on the first floor. As the house is literally burning down behind him, Terry crawls almost a quarter of a mile to his neighbor's house. With 11 gunshot wounds and thinking his whole family was dead, he was fighting to get to safety for one reason. That was more than just his own survival. For the simple fact that he knew the identity of one of the killers. Remember when Terry's older son Matthew was killed? Remember how he was specifically begging Charlie not to kill him? Well, Terry actually heard all of that and just knew. Right then and there, he knew that his daughter's boyfriend was the goddamn killer. And Terry would do anything to make sure he was identified. When he arrives at his neighbor's house, Terry tells his neighbor, Tommy Gaston, that Charlie did it. Tommy frantically calls the police. Listen to this.
Alright, sir, I have a few questions that I need to ask you, okay? We're gonna get you an ambulance. I need you to stay on the line with me, okay? Are you with the patient now?
Yes.
How old is he?
He's 41.
Is he conscious?
Yes.
And is he breathing?
Yes.
Okay. When did this happen?
I don't know, just a little bit ago, and we've also got a house on fire out here.
And the house is on fire? Is the person who shot him still nearby, sir?
Yes, he's right here at me.
You shot him?
No, I didn't.
No.
I don't know any more details. I've got to hang up and help him.
Sir, I have to ask you these questions. Okay, they're en route. Is there any serious bleeding?
Yes, he's bleeding.
Okay, is he completely awake?
Yes, he's awake.
Okay, what part of the body was injured?
I don't know, but I've got to go.
Sir, I need to know where he was shot.
Do what?
I need to know where he was shot at.
I don't know.
So while all of this is happening in the Caffey family home, where the hell is the mastermind herself, Erin Caffey? Well, she was just waiting in the car with her getaway driver, Bobby Johnson. Erin, in an impatient tone while just waiting in the car, can they hurry up? How long are they gonna take in there? Once Charlie and Charles had finished up the murdering part of the plan and drove away in the car, Erin literally shouted, "Holy shit, that was awesome." And no, I'm not making that line up. She had actually said that about her family being murdered. To all my little box heads listening to this, guys, don't ever grow up to be this girl. Anyways, they all fled to Charles's trailer to get a good night's sleep. After, a casual extermination of an entire family because of Terry's 911 call not long before. The police were searching for Charlie Wilkinson. It wasn't long after the murders that they found him holed up in Charles's trailer. They arrested Charles thinking that would, be the end of it. What they didn't expect was to find a 16-year-old blonde girl also in the trailer. Yep. That girl was in fact Erin Caffey. You would think that Erin knew that there was no escaping at this point, right? Well. The plot thickens again. Her boyfriend had been arrested, the police were going to interrogate him, and their master plan would be investigated. But nope, for some reason Erin had the high hopes that she could actually get away with the murders. So when the police found her, Erin tried to play it off like she was kidnapped, unsure of where she was. She claimed that she'd been drugged and had no idea that her family was just killed. And honestly, it kind of worked. The police felt sympathy for her, thinking that she was genuinely a lost, kidnapped little girl who had just lost her entire family and that she was just freaking out. But hey, we all know after watching this section of the video, that's definitely not goddamn true. After running multiple tests on Erin, they discovered that she was lying about being drugged, and in fact, knew a lot about the murders. That sympathy? Yeah, that was all gone now. The police had stopped viewing Erin as a poor little victim and instead embraced the idea that she could be a suspect. Then she blamed Charlie for the initial idea of the plan, while Charlie and the rest of the crew put all the blame on Erin. I mean, it was her idea. Till this very day, Erin Caffey denies ever being the mastermind behind this crime. The 4 involved in the Caffey's family murders all pleaded guilty in court. Bobby Johnson, the getaway driver, got 40 years in prison. Charles Wade and Charlie Wilkinson both were sentenced to life without parole. And the puppet master herself, Erin Caffey, was sentenced to life in prison with the chance of parole after 25 years. Now, Wilkinson and Wade were actually going to face the death penalty for their crimes. Let me actually know in the comments what you think about the death penalty. Are you guys for it, against it? I just want to know. It wasn't until none other than the surviving victim, Terry Caffey himself, testified for the killers of his family to not receive the death penalty as a punishment. Terry was a man of God and strongly believed in forgiveness. Yes, this man had his whole family killed and had it in his heart to forgive them. Man, I can't say I would be the same. Jake Evans. This next child killer was inspired to murder his family after watching a goddamn movie. And once he actually did it, he called the police on himself. Meet 17-year-old Jake Evans, a kid who was about to shoot his mother and sister to death in their home in Aledo, Texas. Jake was born on May 22nd, 1995 to Daryl and Jamie Evans. He was a middle child and their only son. He had 3 sisters, 15-year-old Mallory, his older sister Audrey, and the eldest Emily. Growing up, Jake was never described as a kid with violent tendencies. He was quiet, respectful, and never gave anyone the impression that he would ever do something so evil. So why the hell did he kill his mom and younger sister? Well, it all started just a few hours before the murders took place. It's October 2nd, 2012, and Jake is relaxing and eating some lunch in front of the television in his Texas home. He was watching the slasher horror movie Halloween. You know, the one with Michael Myers. Specifically the 2007 Halloween film directed by Rob Zombie. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? Why is this even important? Well, this movie actually features a 10-year-old version of the infamous fictional killer Michael Myers. Young Michael goes around killing multiple members of his family with zero remorse. This absolutely fascinated Jake. He was so intrigued with the fact that a young kid could kill people without any emotion. Hey, Jake buddy, you know Michael Myers wasn't a real person, right? As he watched the film for the 3rd time just that week, he couldn't help but imagine what it would be like to kill someone. Or someone even in his family. Jake believed that he'd be just like Michael Myers after murdering someone. No remorse, no emotion, so he decided to test that theory out. That night, as Jake sat in his living room, he constructed a plan. His initial idea was to murder his whole family the next morning, like the entire family. He wanted to kill his younger sister, then his mother, then his oldest sister, then his grandparents, and then his other older sister. Man, I almost ran out of breath there. But yeah, this kid had quite the plan. Anyways, after coming to terms with the fact that he would kill his entire family within the next 24 hours, Jake then goes upstairs to his bedroom to watch some good old Family Guy. Then, at around 4:15 a.m., Jake's 15-year-old sister Mallory knocks on his bedroom door. She asks him if he wants to watch a movie with her. Jake declines. He was upset with his younger sister because she had made some racist remarks earlier that day. He even called her hold on, let me get the exact words here, racist for the things that she said, which I will definitely not be repeating because I kind of like my job on YouTube. Yeah, it's kind of confusing. Jake may have liked murderers, but he did not like racists. This conversation seemed to upset Jake quite a bit. Once his sister left, retreating to her bedroom next door, Jake rushed down the stairs. He opened the door to his parents' closet and was looking for something specific. And there it was, his dad's blue foldable knife. And oh, just in case you were wondering, Jake's dad was away on a business trip while all of this was happening. It's why Jake never mentioned him in his murder plan. Anyways, Jake grabs the knife and quickly rushes back up the stairs and to his bedroom. With the knife in his hands, Jake paces around his room, thinking intently about his plan. He contemplates ending his sister's life right then and there. He didn't want to wait all the way to the morning like he had planned. The thought of causing his sister pain right now was just too strong. So Jake exits his bedroom and walks over to the room next door. At 9:30 p.m., he knocks on the door of his sister's bedroom and now asks if she wants to watch a movie. Jake fake happy and smiling. Hey sis, I changed my mind, let's watch a movie. Mallory confused. Okay, what's behind your back then? Oh, nothing. The two head down to the living room and sit on the couch like it was just any other night. They turn on the TV and throw on a movie in the back. Jake continuously runs his fingers over the knife hidden in his pocket while the movie plays in the background. He seriously couldn't bring himself to pay attention to whatever was happening on the TV screen. Over and over, the intrusive thoughts of killing his sister just flooded Jake's mind as he sat right next to her on that couch. And after thinking really hard about it, he decided not to. Well, not yet at least. Jake believed that his sister didn't really deserve to feel any pain when he killed her. So he decided to switch his knife out for a different murder weapon, a gun. And not to mention, at this point, Jake knew that if he impatiently killed his sister, he would have to kill the other victims soon too. This included Jake's mother, who was the only other person in the house with Jake and Mallory at the time. Jake gets up from the couch while the movie continues to play and makes his way downstairs. He heads to his closet and retrieves a revolver. Jake had stolen this gun from his grandfather at an earlier time, then stashed it away in this closet. For a while, Jake paces around the house, trying to come to terms with what he was about to do. He plays with the gun, opening and closing the cylinder of the revolver as he, thinks. And well, Jake accepts the fact that he was gonna do it. He is 100% sure he is going to kill his family tonight. 11:15 p.m. In the upstairs hallway of Jake and Mallory's bedrooms, Jake stands outside of his younger sister's bedroom door with the revolver hidden behind his back. He knocks at Mallory's bedroom door, but this time it wasn't to just ask to watch a movie. When she opens the door, he tells his sister that she needs to go downstairs to help their mother with something. As the 15-year-old girl walks past her brother, she turns her back to him. Jake raises his arm and aims the revolver, putting his own sister in between the sights of the gun. Mallory sees her older brother out of the corner of her eye. Terrified, she questions Jake, hoping that he's just playing some kind of sick joke on her. She tells Jake that she was getting kind of freaked out by him and that he should put the gun down. But that didn't stop this psycho from pulling the trigger. Jake shoots his own sister in the back. She falls to the ground, screaming in pain. A pool of Mallory's blood begins to fill the floor of the upstairs hallway. Jake stands over Mallory's injured body and looks down at her, wanting to make sure that she really dies. Jake raises his arm again, aiming the revolver at his sister yet again. He puts another bullet into his sister, this time in her head. But for some sick reason, that wasn't enough for Jake. There was still someone else in the house that he had to kill. Jake quickly makes his way downstairs to his mother's study. He flings the door open and sees his mother standing in the room. His mother, Jamie Evans, stood there confused and scared. She had heard the previous gunfire upstairs and could only expect the goddamn worst. She was actually about to investigate the loud and unexpected shots right before Jake arrived. This time, without any hesitation, Jake lifts the gun and starts firing in his mother's direction. He shoots her 3 times. The images of Jake's sister and mother laying in the pools of their own blood constantly replayed in Jake's mind. He couldn't believe what he had just done. He paced around his bedroom, screaming, shooting bullets into random objects, and just flat out freaking the hell out. The kid knew he messed up. To make things worse, he could hear gargling sounds coming from the hallway. Yeah, his little sister Mallory wasn't dead yet. Having to go through it all again, Jake returns to his suffering sister, who is barely holding on to her life on the hallway floor. As she chokes on her own blood, he fires another bullet into her head. this time killing her. And just to make sure his mother was also dead, he put another bullet into her head as well. Yeah, Jake couldn't do that again. He tested the theory that he would feel no remorse if he murdered someone, and it wasn't true. I feel like it was kind of obvious that, dude, you're not Michael Myers, you're Jake Evans, you're going to feel bad. Anyways, he felt awful about his actions and called off the rest of his plans. Jake knew that he wouldn't be able to go through with the murders of his grandparents and older sisters. So he picks up the phone and dials 911. As he stands in the Evans family living room, somehow completely calm and emotionless, Jake tells the operator everything. But ladies and box heads, the way this kid confessed was almost as scary as the crimes themselves. I mean, just listen to this 911 call.
I just killed my mom and my sister.
What?
I just killed my mom and my sister.
You just killed your mother and your sister? How did you do that?
I shot him with a .22 revolver.
And what is your name?
Jake Evans.
Jake Evans was then arrested after fully admitting to the murders that took place in his home. In a plea agreement, Jake was sentenced to 45 years in prison for 2 counts of murder. He would be eligible for parole about halfway through his prison sentence. To make things even crazier, the Evans family forgives Jake for his actions, after claiming that he would never murder again and he understands the consequences of his actions. His family fully believes him and supports him. These 2 kids actually murdered a 2-year-old boy. You ever hear the term them kids? Well, this is exactly why. These kids are actually the worst in British history. Alright, so let's rewind to February 12th, 1993. And this is the case of John Venables and Robert Thompson. 2 10-year-old kids. Yeah, you heard me right. Holy crap, 10-year-old kids. These 2 kids managed to do something so awful that it left the entire country asking how kids could be so evil. But wait, let's start from the beginning. So John Venables and Robert Thompson were just 2 kids growing up in Liverpool, England. And they weren't exactly the type to bring home gold stars on their homework. Both of them came from rough, unstable homes. Venables was known to be pretty chaotic and had an abusive family life. His parents were separated and neither one cared much for him. And Thompson's mom, well, let's just say she wasn't winning any Parent of the Year awards either. She was a heavy drinker and he was one of 7 kids who didn't get much care. February 12th, 1993, Venables and Thompson decided to skip school. I mean, kids skipping school, yeah, not really that shocking. But it's what they did after that was truly evil. Now imagine this, it's a normal day at the New Strand Shopping Center in Bootle. Leave it to the British to name an area Bootle. I can already see the comments now. Well, at least our SKUs aren't shooting ranges. Yeah, so Venables and Thompson were wandering around the mall having skipped school to do, kid stuff. Like trying to steal whatever they could get their hands on, but that wasn't enough for them. Nope, they had something a lot worse in mind. So at some point during their mall stealing, the boys noticed a 2-year-old named James Bolger. He was with his mom, Denise, but as every parent knows, it's impossible to keep an eye on your kid 24/7. In one split second, just one, Denise looked away and Venables and Thompson made their move. Want some Pokemon cards? I mean, the poor kid responded probably with like goo goo gaga. I mean, the kid was like 2 years old, man, come on. So one step at a time, pretending to be his friend, they led James away from the store and his mother would never see him again. Yep, 2 kids took another kid. And like you would expect, no one noticed. I mean, these were just kids being themselves, right? People even saw them walking with the little James, but they honestly thought nothing of it. It was like, oh, how sweet, big brother's taking care of the little guy. If only they knew. They took James on a nearly 2.5-mile walk through Liverpool. And yes, you're probably wondering, why didn't anyone stop them? Well, several people did actually notice, but when Venables and Thompson said James was their brother, or that he was just lost, everyone just shrugged it off. So like after wandering the streets for hours, the boys led James to a railway. Now, let me just say this right now, what happens next is awful and viewer discretion is advised. The boys start by torturing James. And for obvious reasons, I'm not gonna draw the kid in these scenes because, like, come on. Anyways, they threw bricks and stones at him, they kicked him, and even shoved paint into his eyes. I mean, can you even imagine? This is a 2-year-old kid we're talking about. He didn't stand a chance. At some point during this brutal attack, Venables and Thompson dropped James on his head, which is probably what finally unalived him. Then, in one final act, they placed his lifeless body on the train tracks of Walton and Anfield Station in Liverpool, hoping a train would hit him and cover up what they did. The train, like you would expect, did eventually run over James, but by that time, he was already dead. And these sick 10-year-old kids went home like nothing happened. Now, as you would imagine, when James was reported missing and the boy's mom was going crazy, scared for her little boy, the police jumped to action. But with no leads and no real idea of what happened, they worked against the clock. It wasn't until 2 days later, on February 14th, that James's body was found still on the tracks and hit by the train. But the authorities saw the injuries on the kid and thought, hey, it just could have been from the train. But since when do trains throw rocks? And hold on, let me tell you, it was so brutal that the police initially thought an adult must have done this. But surprise, the real shock came when CCTV footage from the shopping mall was released. It showed James walking with the two monsters that were only 10 years old. And Boxheads, let me tell you, the public was stunned. I mean, everyone was expecting some shadowy figure, some monstrous adult, but it was two kids. On February 20th, 1993, Venables and Thompson were arrested. Drop the Pokemon cards and put your hands in the air. And get this, when they were taken in for questioning, neither of them showed any real remorse. Venables cried during his confession, but honestly, it was hard to tell if it was out of guilt or fear of him getting caught. Thompson, on the other hand, was cold as ice. Like, how does a 10-year-old even process what he just did? Their trial became a circus. These two boys weren't even teenagers yet, but they were being tried as adults. Good, buddy, good. Eat your goddamn crumpets in jail, you sick fuck. Anyways, now imagine that. Kids in court being held responsible for one of the most disgusting freaking crimes the UK had ever seen, topping even the great tea and crumpets heist of 1990. Trigger warning for the British. Just kidding. That's not real, but guys, the dentists are. Okay, enough for the jokes, my bad. I forgot to mention that during the trial, it came out that Venables and Thompson had actually planned all of this. Nope, it wasn't just a random thing. They had actually tried to kidnap another child earlier that day, but the kid's mom intervened. They found all of this out during a witness testimony. The mom just scolded the boys and they ran off. Yeah, you heard me correctly. They had every intention of doing this from the start. Wanna trade a Pokemon card? Nah, let's just murder. Like what? Venables and Thompson were convicted of James Bulger's murder in November 1993. They were sentenced to be held at Her Majesty's pleasure, which is really British way of saying that they were locked up for good. But here's the part that really gets people and even me. They were both released in 2001 when they were just 18 years old. Yep, they just got new identities and tried to live their lives like nothing happened. I mean, isn't that gross? The same kids who brutally murdered a young toddler were released back into society like, nothing happened. Venables, though, couldn't seem to keep his life together after his release. He was arrested in 2010 for possessing child videos, which I'm not gonna talk more about that. Let's just say, not exactly shocking, right? He was sent back to prison and was released again in 2013. And then, because he clearly didn't learn, he was busted again in 2017. For, you guessed it, more child, yeah. This time, he got a 40-month sentence. Okay, couldn't they just axe this guy? Like, he's not learning clearly. Gosh. And as for Thompson, well, not much is known about him. I mean, he's been flying under the radar, successfully staying out of the limelight. Okay, so that last one was rough, but it doesn't get any better. You've probably heard some wild stories before, probably here on the page, but this one, oh, it's on a whole nother level. We're talking about Amarjeet Sada, an 8-year-old boy who's probably the youngest damn serial killer in history. Don't quote me on that. So Amarjeet Sada was born in 1998 in the village of Begusaraya in the Indian state Bihar. You're probably picturing a small, tight-knit community where everyone knows each other, and you'd be right. Amarjeet came from an extremely poor family. His dad scrapped together whatever work he could find, and like many families, life wasn't exactly easy for them. But what no one realized was just how much darkness had already crept into Amarjeet's young mind. Amarjeet did something absolutely disgusting and killed his first victim. Who was that? It was his own cousin, a 6-month-old baby. Amarjeet lured his baby cousin away from the family's watchful eyes and brutally assassinated her. After killing his cousin, you'd think someone would report this, right? Well, not quite. The family, for reasons that still boggle my box mind, decided to stay quiet. Some think that it's just out of shame or fear of looking like bad parents, but regardless of why, no one called the authorities and Amarjeet walked away without any punishment. And if you're thinking, okay, well, that's an isolated incident, surely that was the end of it. Well, you would be, in fact, box dead wrong. Fast forward a bit and we've got another victim. This time it was Amarjeet's own baby sister who was less than a year old. Yeah, you heard that correctly. He killed his own sister. And he did it exactly the same way as before, luring her away and ending her life before anyone could stop him. And again, the family didn't say a word. I mean, could you imagine 2 infants from the same family brutally killed by their 8-year-old son? And then they just stayed quiet? Once again, my mind, in its box shape, be boggling, bro. And you have to ask, what was going on with Amarjeet? I mean, was the kid just evil? No one can really say for sure, and it's not like anyone was rushing to get help at this point either. So naturally, this story did not stop here. Here's where things go from a box to a goddamn head. Amarjeet's 3rd victim was the neighbor's baby girl, only 6 months old. Yeah, you could probably see a pattern forming here. This kid had some sort of obsession with unaliving babies. On this particular day in 2007, Amarjeet found the perfect opportunity. The baby's mother, likely trusting that no one in her small village would harm her tiny baby child, left her daughter unattended reportedly at a small school. You know, just for a little bit. And that's all Amarjeet needed. He took the baby, carried her off to a secluded area, and well, you know the rest. When the body was found this time, the truth could not stay buried. The locals quickly connected the dots, realizing that Amarjeet had been around during the time of the baby's disappearance. And when they confronted him, he calmly admitted to the murder. Amarjeet, are you killing babies again? No, Papa, no. Telling lies? Kicks a rock. Some boxheads in the comments might ask, why is my Indian accent so well? I don't know. More boxhead lore. Anyways, this 8-year-old boy casually confessed to killing not just this baby, but the other 2 as well. No remorse, no tears, like he did not care. When Amarjeet was arrested in 2007, the police were just in shock. They had never dealt with anything like this before. An 8-year-old serial killer? Like, even I haven't heard of that. I mean, my job is literally to cover the weirdest, most shocking, most disgusting stories on the internet, which if you want to hear more, hit that subscribe button, but that's besides the point. Anyways, according to reports, when asked why he did it, Amarjeet simply smiled. The boy's family finally spoke up after his arrest, admitting that they knew about the earlier murders but didn't report them. I mean, you'd think after the first death, something would have clicked, right? But since this part of the world doesn't have much law enforcement, the parents were not arrested for the cover-up. I mean, what do you guys think? Comment if you think that's fair. Like, should they have got in trouble? I don't know. Not for me to say. But no, they decided to stay quiet, and these 3 innocent babies lost their lives because of this monster and I guess the people that helped him. Amarjeet was placed in a juvenile detention facility, which is kids' jail if you didn't know. Which is where things again get a little bit complicated. You see, in India, the legal system is a bit different when it comes to child criminals. At the time of his arrest, Indian law didn't allow children under the age of 18 to be formally charged with murder. So Amarjeet was sent to a children's home instead of a prison. And since juvenile records are sealed, there's been little information about what happened to him since. He could be out there in the world right now. Like, seriously, he could be watching this video. Weird. This next child murderer is actually a little girl. Ooh, fight the patriarchy. I'm kidding. Okay, so her name was Mary Bell, who, you guessed it, was another child killer. In 1968, an 11-year-old girl from Newcastle, England, got some fame for doing things most children don't even think is possible, which is, again, killing people. First, let's rewind to Mary's childhood because trust me, it's a big part of understanding how all this even happened. Mary Bell was born on May 26, 1957, to Betty Bell, who was a lady of the night, we'll say. With the father, you may have guessed it, being a lady of the night is unknown. In fact, Betty reportedly tried to give Mary away multiple times, and she abused her daughter both physically and emotionally. I mean, how's that for a loving start in life, right? Oh, and I forgot to mention that there's strong evidence that Betty forced Mary to engage in, weird kind of acts with her clients when she was as young as 5 years old. On May 25th, 1968, just a day before Mary's 11th birthday, she committed her first murder. Her victim, 4-year-old Martin Brown. Mary knew Martin from their neighborhood. I mean, she lured Martin into an abandoned house in the area that the kids would play at. That's where she strangled him to death. Then, after killing him, she just walked away. No remorse, no panic. It's as if she didn't quite grasp the gravity of what she just did. There wasn't a missing persons report. His body was found shortly after by other kids that were, playing there. The thing is, at first, no one suspected a murderer, and Martin's death was ruled an accident. They thought he just fell somewhere. There were no visible signs of trauma, and the idea that a little girl would have killed him, well, no one was thinking along those lines. So, like you would expect, the case was closed temporarily. Now, if you're thinking good old Mary Bell would lay low after her first murder, well, I mean, this is where you're wrong. Just a few days later, Mary and her friend Norma Bell, they got the same last name but no relation, it's just a weird coincidence. Anyways, they broke into a nursery and trashed the place. They wrote disturbing messages like, "I murder so that I may come back," and "We did murder Martin Brown." Yeah, talk about a crazy cry for attention, am I right? But get this, the police brushed it off like it was some prank. I mean, what are the odds that 2 little girls would be actually confessing to a murder? Maybe the cops should listen a little bit more. Then came the second murder. On July 31st, 1968, just 2 months after Martin Brown's death, Mary struck again. This time her victim was 3-year-old Brian Howe. Now, Mary's behavior during this murder was even more disturbing. She strangled Brian just like she'd done with Martin, but this time she took it a bit further. After Brian was dead, she mutilated his body with scissors. Yeah, scissors, cutting his hair and scratching up his legs. She even carved an M for Mary into his stomach. If you didn't already think that this case was horrifying enough, this part should really make you cringe. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Mary's accomplice in the second murder was once again her friend Norma Bell. After Brian's body was found, police quickly realized that this wasn't an accident. They suspected murder this time, and that's when they started putting the pieces together. So, how did the police catch Mary Bell? Well, it turns out that Mary couldn't keep her mouth shut. She started acting strangely, asking neighbors if they missed Brian, and even taking people to the scene of the crime as if she wanted to relive the moment. She also made comments to the police saying things like, "I know what happened to Brian because I saw him last." Not exactly subtle. When police began questioning local children, both Mary and Norma's names kept coming up. Witnesses said that they kept seeing the 2 girls with Brian on the day of his murder, and their suspicious behavior made them prime suspects. During interrogations, Mary tried to pin the blame on Norma, but it didn't take long for the police to figure out who the real leader was. On August 7th, 1968, Mary Bell was officially arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. And for you guys wondering, she was only 11 years old. Yeah, you heard me correctly. An 11-year-old girl was charged with murdering 2 toddlers. Mary's trial began in December 1968, and let me tell you, it was a mess. People were fascinated and yet horrified by the idea of a child killer. Like perhaps you watching this video. The prosecution argued that Mary was fully aware of what she was doing and that her actions were deliberate and calculated. But the defense claimed that Mary suffered from a personality disorder and lacked the emotional capacity to understand the full extent of her crimes. Plus, this was a time when people didn't really know what to make of child criminals. She was evil, or she was just a product of her environment. I guess we still kind of don't know that. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think in the comments? In the end, Mary was convicted of manslaughter, not murder. because the jury accepted that she was suffering from a psychopathic disorder. Mary Bell was sentenced and detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, which again is British for possibly forever. Now imagine that, being 11 years old and sentenced to who knows how many years behind bars. So what happened to Mary after all of this? Well, she served 12 years in various institutions before being released in 1980 at the age of 23. And get this, when she was released, she was given a new identity to protect her from the public. I mean, can you really blame them? A child killer out in the world with her real name? Yeah, that would have been a media frenzy. But that's not quite where the story ends. In 1998, Mary Bell co-authored a book with a journalist, Gita Sereni, titled Cries Unheard: The Story of Mary Bell. In it, she gives her story of the murders and blames much of her actions on the abuse she suffered at the hands of her mother, which I told you at the beginning. The book was met with outrage from the families of her victims, and understandably so. But listen, if you want to hear about more deadly killers, click this video right here where I talk about the deadliest killers on death row. Trust me, you don't want to miss that video. Do you still not trust me yet? Are you gonna click it?